following the money and trying to come up with a profit-making institution like the World Bank needs to be addressed. World Bank, which is a profit-making institution, can successfully help out underdeveloped countries. Why couldn't a new national development bank do as well in helping out troubled American industries? Maybe what we need is an American monetary fund. What's so terrible about a $5 billion national development bank to get our basic industries competitive again? Making money on money isn't productive. It doesn't create any jobs, and those of us who do create jobs, who invest in productivity and want to expand and are willing to pay our fair share of taxes, end up downstream waiting for a few measly drops of credit to get through so we can put a few more people back to work. High interest rates encourage the big boys to play their new game of making money on money. When money is expensive, investment in research and development is risky. When rates are high, it's cheaper to buy a company than to build one. Of the 10 largest corporate mergers in U.S. history, 9 have taken place during the Reagan administration. One of the biggest involved U.S. Steel. While protected by trigger prices which cost us $100 more per car to buy American steel, U.S. Steel paid $4.3 billion to buy Marathon Oil. Most of that money was borrowed. It should have been used to buy modern basic oxygen furnaces and continuous casters to compete with the Japanese. When the steelworkers saw what was going on, they were so mad. They demanded that any wage concessions they made be plowed back into the steel business. It's almost unbelievable that American management should have to be lectured to by the workers on just how our system works. What about DuPont buying Conoco for $7.5 billion and in the process tripling its debt to $4 billion? It cost DuPont $600 million a year in interest just to service that debt. Wouldn't we all be better off if DuPont used that money to develop the kind of new and inventive products that made them world famous? And what about Benedict's, United Technology, and Martin borrowing $5.6 billion to fund their corporate cannibalism without creating a single new job in the process? That three-ring circus ended only when Allied threw a tent over it all and put a stop to the whole thing. Think of this. In the decade between 1972 and 1982, the total number of employees in America's 500 largest industrial companies actually declined. All the new jobs? Well, over 10 million came from 2 other sources. One was small business, the other, I'm sorry to say, was government, which may be the only real growth industry left. Why don't we pass a law that says you borrow money to buy somebody else and cannibalize them? The interest payments on those loans are not deductible. That would get the excesses out of the system pretty fast. Right now, if you want to buy up a competitor, generally you can't. That would violate the antitrust laws. But if you want to buy a company that does something else entirely, that's okay. Where's the sense in that? Why should a guy who's been in the steel business suddenly become an oil man? It's a completely different world. It will take him years to learn about it, and most important, it's not productive. If we lower interest rates and ended this merger madness, we could get the money changers out of the temple of the national economy. We could get back to doing business the American way by reinventing and competing instead of buying each other up, and by creating more jobs so more people could participate in our economic growth. Welfare costs for local, state, and federal governments would come down. Capital would begin to accumulate. Plants would expand again. As everyone knows, the way to lower interest rates is to make big cuts in the federal deficit. It's time somebody took away the government's credit card. Take away their charge card. That's right. Today, Washington uses more than half of all the available credit, 54% to be exact, to finance the national debt. Despite all of President Reagan's campaign promises, the national debt is out of control. Back in 1835, the federal deficit was a mere $38,000. In 1981, the annual deficit broke $100 billion for the first time in history. Today, it's about $200 billion, and over the next 5 years, it's expected to total over $1 trillion. Hello, folks. We're there. 2007. We picked up a deficit that big once before, during the period from 1776 through 1981. Think of it. It took us 206 years with 8 wars, 2 major depressions, a dozen recessions, 2 space programs, the opening of the West, and the terms of the 39 presidents to do that. Now we're going to duplicate that record in just 5 years while we're at peace and during a so-called economic recovery. To put it another way, there are 61 million families in this country, and we're going to put all of them in hock for $3,000 a year without their permission. It's like Uncle Sam is using your credit card without asking. As a result, we're mortgaging the future of our kids and our grandchildren. Since most of them can't vote yet, they've given us their proxy, and we're not using it very well. In my book, the boys in Washington, all of them, get an F on the budget. We have to attack the budget deficit and our other economic problems before they completely overwhelm us. Of course, to solve big problems, you have to be willing to do unpopular things. As a child of the Great Depression, Lee Iacocca said, "I've always been a great fan of FDR. He did a lot for this country, even though the ideologies were fighting him every step of the way. He melted the pot. He included the excluded. He had the audacity to take people off the street corners where they were selling apples and put them to work. Above all, he was pragmatic. He was confronted by big problems. He did something, and that was always his great objective. The only thing you have to fear is fear itself." And he was right. Roosevelt did not attack the problems of the Depression with charts and graphs or with Harvard Business School theories. He took concrete action. He was always willing to try something new, and if that didn't work, he was willing to try something else. We need a little more of that spirit in Washington today. Our problems are huge and they're complicated, but there are solutions. They aren't always easy, and they aren't always comfortable, but they do exist. The great issues facing us today are not Republican issues or Democrat issues. The political parties can debate the means, but both parties must embrace the end objective, which is to make America great again. Can we succeed in this undertaking? Someone once said that in great undertakings there is glory even in failure. So we must try. And if we do, I believe that we'll make it. We are, after all, a resourceful people in a nation that has been blessed with abundance. With direction, leadership, and the support of the American people, we can't miss our objectives and goals. We can turn this around and make this a great country. I'm convinced that this country can once again be the bright and shining symbol of power and freedom, challenged by none and envied by all.